everyone. Thank you for joining us for this week's coffee chat. This is the fourth episode where we'll be talking about interview tips and tricks. Today I'm joined by Poorna, who is a student success advisor at Humber. And yeah, we're going to be discussing different interview tips for you guys to help you out. And we really hope that you enjoy the session today. So thanks, Poorna, for joining us. It's awesome to have you on. We've been working together for a while, but I haven't seen him since March because of all the COVID stuff happening. So it's nice to see your face.
Thank you. Nice to see you too.
So yeah, thanks for coming on. Maybe we can go into like a little bit of a background of how long you've been at Humber and what you do at Humber. So your role as a student success advisor and everything like that.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that. My name is Poorna. That's my first name. I prefer that. My last name is Gubala. Sometimes it's a little hard to say. Anyways, that's my name. My role is the career and student success advisor. Essentially, my role is to ensure student success and retention. Having said that, we advise students both on academics and careers. Now, on the academic side, my responsibility is to ensure that students go through their academics very successfully. We help students with struggling in course. They need some extra supports to be successful in their whole program. So we discuss that, or we provide resources or information related to that. That's very briefly. And on the career side, we help students, or we advise students or assist students with many career marketing tools such as resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, interview tips, as well as practicing interviews with us. Apart from us, we have our career support peers who does help you, and probably Sarah will be providing links on making appointments for those things. For interviews, practice interviews, and a little bit about my background. I've been at Humber for the last 3 years. The first few months at Humber has been working with alumni and mature students, which was it's called a career advancement advisors. I was mostly working with internationally trained individuals, helping them with their resumes, cover letters, mock interviews, and all that. Then I moved on to the current role for the last 2 years, and this is one of the roles I've been enjoying a lot. I love helping students in this role. As I said, I ensure student success and retention. Previous to that, my experience had been in a university setting where I was mostly responsible for placing students in their internships and co-ops, and as well as assisting them with their career stuff. And previous to that, I was in an a community employment setting, wherein it's pretty much the same job, but the audience are different. Here, I've been working with unemployed, mature, or newcomers to Canada, or people seeking retraining through the government assistance programs. That's me briefly.
Okay. That's really cool. Yeah, that's a good background too, that you have, some of the community side and then also the university and placement side. So you kind of have like a well-rounded background in advising. And yeah, I know that you do a great job. So that's awesome. If you guys want to book an appointment with Poorna, if you're in one of the FAST programs, I can include the link as well for you guys. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But yeah, so how about how is it working from home and stuff compared to being in the office? Do you miss, that face-to-face interaction and everything?
Yes, definitely. I'm a very people's person, so I love, going in person and saying hi, hello to all my team members. And, even if I come across some of my students in the hallway, I stop and say, hey, how are you doing? So I miss that part. Now, initially, it was very tough working remotely, getting used to it. I think it was everyone's problem to begin with. But now I'm used to it. Actually, working from home is much busier. You don't know the time, By the time, you finish some of the things, some of the tasks or responsibilities, you're like, oh, it's 5 o'clock already or 6, you don't even know. So yes, working hard. I think it's still an adjusting process for me, though, me personally, because I love going to an office, sitting there. That's my kind of personality.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like I miss that aspect too in the social aspect.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's great that we have the virtual appointments to offer.
Exactly.
So you're still kind of seeing the students face to face. They're seeing you. So it kind of feels like more personal that way.
And working from remotely, you don't need to worry about traffic jams.
Oh yeah,
on 401.
I agree. I agree. It's definitely nice to not have a commute. My commute is like a minute from my bedroom and
Really?
then my to my
Yes.
office.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So yeah, thanks for giving us a background about you and how long you've been at Humber and your professional background. So maybe we can go into now like interview tips and tricks for students that you would recommend. Like, what are your top tips that you recommend to students?
For a seasoned professional or an experienced person who have attended several interviews and have been successful in many interviews, I think always a new interview call brings in some level of stress and anxiety. That's normal.
Yeah.
So what I would say is the first tip I would always say is be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. Do your homework. Most important, what I would say is it's called a 3R. What do you call is it? The concept of 3Rs. That's what I use. First
Hmm.
R is research. Okay, find out what the position is about. What are some of your skills? Just try to know yourself and try to identify what the company's strategic goals are, special projects they're working on, details of the position as per the job posting. Let's say now things have changed because of COVID. Things are, people are working remotely. But in case if you have to go to things, go to interview in person, maybe you may want to research where is this located? How long does it take it to drive there? Where should I be parking? These things might like sound silly, but in reality, they matter a lot. Just before 5 minutes or a few minutes before the interview, you don't want to stress yourself. So
Yeah.
do your research, not just about the job, not just about yourself. After you do all this, the other aspects of research is okay. Where are they located? Where do I go there? Who are the people that's interviewing me? That's the first star I always advise my students to look into that. The next R is called rehearse. Now you did all your research.
Yeah.
Now it's all about practicing, anticipate. Now you don't know what the employer is going to ask you, like the questions generally, but just based on your research, you may want to look at or prepare for some possible interview questions. Like try to enlist maybe the help of a family member or a peer or a friend. Get either both of you sit together, come up with some questions, or you prepare the questions and give it to the other person and ask them to ask you those questions.
Yeah.
Or other one is by the other way to practice is, of course, I told you in my introduction, is you can also book an appointment with the career center, one of the career support peers or one of the advisors like us, and practice your interviews. Now, being prepared often means is you have control on the interview.
Mhm.
Okay. No. So, in other words, what I would say is not exactly of the interview, but you have control of yourself. You know what you're talking about. That's what
Right.
I meant when you're prepared.
Yeah.
And the next final R amongst the interview tips I would say is always is relax, stay focused.
Mm.
Stay focused. Now, of course, as I said earlier, interview will give you some level of anxiety and stress, but that's, as I said, it's normal. So try to get a good night's sleep. But make sure in the morning have your breakfast and plan for any. The other thing I would say is any unexpected issues that might come up. Now, so there are two ways to look at this. Now, one is with a remote interview. Okay, what's going to happen? Okay, hey, if my phone breaks down, if my laptop breaks down, do I have a backup plan? Now let's say you're going in person for an interview. Okay, what do I do? So in case if there's a winter storm, when should I leave, or what are my backup plans? So have all those things ready. And now one thing to keep in mind is always rejection is a part of job search. Don't take it personally. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're not a good applicant. For example, I've interviewed at Humber twice. I never got in there, but I finally was able to get in my third interview. And with that interview, what I did was I was able to know what my weaknesses are, where I need to improve, where I did well, and I practiced and
Yeah.
practiced. So that helped me getting back in there. Now, during this, another tip I would say is maintaining a positive attitude and treating each interview as a fresh opportunity, though. Not thinking, okay, hey, don't get depressed, don't get rejected. So it's a part of the job search process.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, these are some of the important interview tips I would say will really benefit you. And these are some of the things I have followed myself and I've seen success.
Yeah, I agree. I totally, those are really good. I like the three R's, um, like research, rehearse, and relax. So
Relax.
that's awesome. Yeah, so research, of course, is important. So you kind of get a background of the company and you know um, the work culture and maybe can even see what kind of questions they might ask you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like Glassdoor is a good website, actually. I've heard they have like some
Exactly. Yeah.
questions,
Yeah.
and we also have, yeah, different reviews. So it's good to see on there like how the interview process.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, the other thing I would like to add in research is, let's say you submitted your resume, you got an interview call. That means the employer actually liked something on your resume. So if the resume worked and you got an interview call, that means I would, in my personal opinion, almost 80% of the interview is done because they liked something on your resume. So you need to prepare what you said. You need to go through your resume. You need to go through the job posting, compare it. What were the see where did I cover most of the information? So most of the interviews will be based on that, based on your resume, as well as of course the job posting.
yeah, that's very true. Another thing was the rehearse portion of the three R's is really important too, because in my experience as well, like I tend to get really nervous before interviews. So rehearsing it, even though I don't know the exact questions that they're going to ask, just having that at the back of my head and remembering certain points,
Mhm.
um, I can apply those to different questions. And then I feel prepared and I feel less nervous. So super important. And it's great that we have that in the Career Center for students to use, doing a
Exactly.
mock interview with either you or with a CSP.
So just remember, of course, and Sarah is there, myself, and the other CSPs are there to support you. And I'm sure Sarah will be including the link to book appointments. Yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you. So, what are some tips that you would recommend students to reduce their stress before an interview? Because I know it's a big thing for a lot of.
Yes, yes. One thing you can do is this is very commonly practiced thing. I would say a lot of people even suggest that even if you look at tons of videos or if you read some books, is doing some sort of meditation, like 5 minutes or something. Some people actually do some yoga relaxation videos, sorry, poses or practice. They practice some yoga. But some of the common things that do work is doing a few minutes of meditation or taking, put everything away and chatting with some of your family members or doing some yoga or exercises or going for a walk would really help.
Exactly. I totally agree. I like the meditation thing. And there's so many apps too that you can download for free on your phone. So those are really accessible. And then if you have your earphones with you while you're at an interview, you can always pop those in and just kind of like de-stress for a minute before. And then, well, now with COVID, it's usually virtual interviews. What are your like tips for virtual interviews right now?
Video and Skype interviews have been happening for a long time.
Hmm.
Okay, so a few things to keep in mind when you're trying to do some virtual interviewing is what I would say is, just like for a regular in-person interview, try practicing it. For example, there are, as Sarah said in earlier, there are a lot of, apps for, relaxing. Just the same way you have apps for interview recording now. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think Humber has that interview stream recording service, but you might access some apps on your phones or or even on the desktop computers. You can record yourself, practice it. So it's especially to do with with online interviewing. It's hard to see the body language of your interviewers. You don't know if they're actually looking at you. It's hard to know whether they're actually how would I put it, which whether they're actually looking at you or if they're looking at something else. But you need to still stay focused. That's the reason I would say is practicing. So try recording yourself and look at the video after recording and see where you need to improve. with your eye contact or your body movements, things like that. Okay.
That's a good idea.
Yes. And the other thing is the timing. What I would suggest is if there's a slight time lag because of online connections, you know, wait until, for example, how would I put it? An interviewer asked you a question. Then once you answered the question, just don't cut it off. What I meant is just wait until you're sure that you have completely finished answering or responding to that specific question. Okay. And then give it a little pause. Once you answer the question, maybe give it a couple of, or I would say 10 seconds of, you know, brief pause so that you make sure that message you, whatever you try to convey has gone through the system. Even though it sounds a little different, what I meant is technology. It's because of technology. You have to make sure they listen to whatever you said. That's what I meant to say is time lag. Now, surroundings. For example, if you're interviewing, just make sure that you're in a quiet space. Without any noises, disturbances. If you have kids or someone, make sure you have a babysitter or someone helping out at the time. And that's extremely important one. The other thing is technology. As I said earlier, make sure you have good internet connection. Make sure you have you know, your video or the audio services on your system are working really well. The way to test it is, again, as I said, record yourself and see whether the recording is clear, if there's any disturbances and all that, and how the video is. And now, the other thing is, of course, even in online interviews, as I said, it's hard to know or see the expressions of the interviewers, but still stay focused and smile all the time.
Yes, yes, totally agree. And another thing too that I just thought of is when you could see your own self in the webcam, try to look at the actual camera, not at yourself. So it looks like you're making eye contact with them.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then some benefits of online interviewing is, of course, you know, you have the convenience, you're at home, you don't need to travel. So that hassle is not there. But again, the drawbacks, as I said earlier, you know, the technology could be a barrier. It's hard to see the expressions. And again, online interviewing is always impersonal, you know. Yeah, some people might have feel uncomfortable doing online interviews. They prefer, me as a person, I would prefer in person. But again, hey, but if there's no choice, we have to do it. I'm right. Yeah. And then, yeah, those are some of the you know, drawbacks and benefits of online interviews. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And also for the students that are watching, I'm going to be posting our career resources page in the chat so that you can see different interview guides and tips. So things like how to reduce stress and anxiety before an interview, how to answer different commonly asked interview questions, using the STAR method, which we'll talk about now actually. So yeah, just a heads up that those resources are available and they're free. So yeah, Poorna, if you want to help students understand a little bit more about how to answer commonly asked interview questions, like what's the kind of structure of their answer, if that makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Now, interviews, in my opinion, are you know, three different kinds. I'm not talking about the methods of interviews or anything, but in general, the interview questions that can be asked, or the questions that is asked to assess you as a candidate, are normally some of the questions we call as the traditional or the classic questions, which is generally tell me something about yourself. You know, what are your weaks and strengths, or weaknesses and strengths. Things like that are some of the classic questions you get asked. Now, the other set of questions, what we call as the behavioral questions. What behavioral questions are all about is to assess your fit for the role. Now, during the hiring process, the interview gives you a chance to go beyond the hard skills presented in your resumes, and assess your soft skills, and as well as your professionalism and potential fit with the company. Possibly what I meant to say is, let's say you're in a computer programming, you're a computer programmer. You know how to code it in 30 seconds. That takes someone 2 hours to write a code. Yes, you're technically strong, but as long as you can't convey to an employer that you're a fit for the team and a fit for the company, your chances of getting hired are less. Now, what employers do is, using this behavioral interviews, they try to assess the candidate's fit for the role and for the company. Okay. Yeah. Now, generally, the behavioral questions start with, tell me a time. Did you ever come across? Have you ever dealt with? These are some of the ways a behavioral question might start with. The strategies for answering a behavioral question is what we call the STAR method. Okay, it's STAR, STAR method. The S is situation. So it's like briefly set up the situation by describing the context of your example, such as who, what, where, when, how, things like that. For example, an employer might ask you a question saying, have you ever dealt with a very upset customer? Maybe you can say, hey, I recall a situation in my previous employment where I have to deal with a very upset customer. The situation was he bought a goods which we did not realize was actually out of date, but the customer noticed it. He was pretty upset. He came back to the store and he said, this is what happened. How could you sell this? And then that's the situation. Okay, that's the thing. The next is the task. Explain the task, the problem you had to complete or the solve. Now, you know the situation is the customer is very upset because of buying a very expired product from the shelves of your store. The task ahead of you is to resolve that problem. How do we do that? Here, in this case, you might say, hey, will I listen to the customer's concerns with patience, understood his issues, and I know that we were at fault, so I explained where the issue has occurred, so we apologized to him. I got in my supervisor also, and they too apologized to the customer. We gave them a gift card, as well as we compensated them with an extra product, product as well. That's the one. So the next thing is the action, which I sort of covered in the response is the action. So what action did you take? So you brought in the supervisor and you provided the customer with a gift card and this. That's the action you took, the result. Now, in behavioral questions, result is always a must. You need to tell them what happened after this action you took. Mm-hmm. So close by explaining the results of your efforts or quantify the outcome if possible. Yeah. Okay. For example, in this case, the result is you need to tell them the customer was happy. Possibly they might be happy because you've apologized, you gave them a new product, and as well as compensated them with a gift card. Okay, so you need to tell them the result was the customer left happy. We apologized and we told him that he's free to leave us a feedback if there's anything, and they can contact us. But you took a good initiative of solving that customer problem, and they left the store happily. That's what. So I gave you an example and talked about answering a specific, a behavioral question. So this is the approach you have to take. So always, when you come across, did you come a question, an interview question such as, tell me a time, did you come across, have you ever dealt with? Think about the STAR. S is situation, T is task, A is action, R is result. Yeah. When you have that in your mind, you'll be able to answer these questions, behavioral questions, very easily. Now, one important thing to keep in mind is you need to give them an example for behavioral questions. Yeah. Don't make assumptions. Don't say, oh, if this happens. Yeah, it has to be like a past experience. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I love the STAR method, though. I think it's such a good structure for students and just anyone to follow, so that it's organized in your own head and it's not redundant. You're getting to the point and you're getting all the information you need. Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That was a good example too. Those examples within were good for sure. Lastly, maybe we can just touch on the biggest interview do's or don'ts, funny things that you've maybe yes. Students have told you, or just do's or don'ts in interviews. The do's before the interview. Always do your homework. Do your research. Homework in the sense, who are you? What are your skills? How are you going to convey your skills and experience on the interview day? So look at the job posting. Another thing is what exactly it is, what I'm supposed to be conveying. The other do's is before the interview is, as I said earlier in the beginning of this session, is do your research about the company. Where, apart from the company, what are the company's values are, culture is, what are some of their, why are they in the news recently, things like that. And the other thing, do's, is trying to know where this company is located. As I said earlier, if you have to go there in person, if it's a virtual one, whether it's a it could be a Zoom interview, or it could be a Teams interview, or a different platform. So make sure that system works on your computers. Those are some of the do's before the interview. Some of the don'ts before the interview is, as we discussed, don't stress yourself. Don't overdo. Don't overdo in the sense, don't wake up, be awake until like 2 or 3 in the evening. Oh, sorry, in the night, and try preparing yourself. So the actual, on the next day, on the actual time of the interview, you do look tired.
Right.
Okay. The other do's, I would say, about on the day of the interview, you need to make a first good impression. That means try to be there for the interview at least 15 minutes early. And if you're attending an online interview, make sure you try to log in. Possibly the HR or the hiring manager will be sending you a login details for the interview a day ahead or a few days ahead. So make sure you try to log in there a few minutes early, or 10 to 15 minutes early, to make sure that everything's working. Test your mics, your videos and all that. That's for online. Now, if you're going in person, other do's is, as I said, go there, make sure you take your resumes, cover letters, the documents you sent, any other documents that you feel relevant for the interview, including your references.
Yeah.
And if possible, take some of your business cards. If you have some business cards, take them as well. Now, the don'ts on the day of the interview are, again, dress for the role. Now, of course, you're going for a job as a mechanic, and if you go in a 3-piece suit, no, maybe you may want to dress up as semi-formal. Okay, yeah. That's what I meant. The other don'ts are, again, during the interview is when an interviewer, normally interviews will be generally panels. You don't find a face-on one-to-one interviews. These are rarely happening now. Mostly the interviews are panel interviews. Make sure when an interviewer is asking you a question, make sure you make that eye contact. Don't just look at, don't in the, one of the don'ts is, even though the interview question is asked by one interviewer, try to make that eye contact through all 3 people, instead of just staying or focusing on the person who asked you the question. It's extremely important you make that eye contact. The do's after the interview, the post interview, is just reviewing what you said, sending the employer a thank you note. That's extremely important. Okay. Yeah, one important thing, sorry, I missed from during the interview. The do is, at the end of the interview, it's your opportunity to ask an employer the questions. Right. An interview always ends with an employer asking the interviewee, do you have any questions for us? If you tell them that you don't have any questions, it gives an impression that you don't really care for the position. You didn't really do enough research. You didn't put in enough efforts. Yeah. To know about the company or the position. So always the biggest do is after the interviews is asking them questions. Okay. Right. And now let's move on to the post interview. The don'ts is, of course, don't stress yourself. It happened. Now you learn from your mistakes. But again, hey, if you get a job, you're good to go. Yeah, those are all such good tips. Thank you so much for sharing those. I'm sure students will find that super helpful. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, I think that wraps up our little session today. I think we've talked about a lot of helpful tips for students. And like I said, if you guys want to book an appointment to get some help with your interview, I will be leaving the links below. And then I'll also include links for the career resources, which have a ton of guides on more in depth about how to use the STAR method, commonly asked questions, how to answer them, etc. So yeah, thank you so much, Poorna, for joining me today. I really, really appreciated it. And it was really nice to see you and chat with you about different interview techniques. Thank you, Sarah. My pleasure. And I hope you'll all benefit from some of the interview skills we discussed today. And as Sarah said, she'll be leaving a link for you to book an appointment. And our website has several resources, not just for interviews, but for resumes, cover letters, and all that. You can go through those resources as well. Of course, we'll be running some virtual workshops, I believe, in the fall term. So please make sure you check our website for the upcoming sessions as well.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, thank you so much, Poorna. Have a good
Thank you,
rest of
Sarah.
your day, and thank you
Thank
to
you.
the students that came
Thank
out
you.
today.